Oh, yeah. Come back next, come on next. Very entertaining. The color of some that's. Yeah. It's like kind of fly out. All right, going to call to order the October 19th, 2023 Town of Somerville Design Review Board. Before we get to approving the minutes, I'd like to ask if we can make some changes to the agenda. I'd like to move number 3 to old business. That is old business. We've seen that project before. And then I'd like to move number 5, the first item under new business, if the applicant is here, just because I think that is a pretty straightforward project that should go pretty quickly. If y'all are okay with that.
So 5 to 1 and 3 to 1.
3 to old business.
3 to 1, right?
3 to, no, let's go 3 to
3 in new business to 3 in new business to old business.
correct,
4 and all.
to make it as number 4.
And
then we'll take-
to old business. That's one.
And we'll take number 5 under new business to 1 under new business.
I'll say,
All right.
I'll say.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All righty. So can we have a motion for approval of previous minutes?
Make a motion.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And there's no signs, right?
Correct.
All right, so the first order of business is 710 North Pine Street. Applicant. Okay.
All right, so the first item under old business is a request for final approval of a proposed new office plan for 710 North Pine Street. Property is currently undeveloped, and it was last before the board in July for conceptual review. Based on staff's comments, the proposed plan is a revision to a previously approved plan for two small offices on this property. The DRB previously approved parking lot border reductions. The plan calls for the placement of a single modular office on the property in lieu of the previously approved stick-built offices. A brick wainscot, general shale old cypress, and vertical siding Sherwin-Williams piece yellow are proposed. Architectural shingles for the roof. And Mr. Locklear is here to present for the applicant.
And Tim, if we could just reflect in the minutes that Ms. Pratt recused.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. This project back before you here is for the the site went from a two very small buildings to one little bit larger building. Last time we came in, we just needed to dress up the building a little bit. The site plan was, I think, was fine, and we had attempted to keep the ADA entrance in the front, and ended up not wanting to do that. I think it had something to do with the ground elevation, not having much of a reveal in the front. So we've got that moved back to the rear. That's the only site modification, but that's where it was originally in the first approval of the previous, even with two buildings. So the ramp off of that, instead of winding back and forth serpentine, it just kind of wraps around the handicap parking area. Park stays the same, everything else stays the same on the site. Want to get past that first?
Let's look at the architecture because
I wouldn't quite call it architecture, but
sure.
the building. The building. Well, pay no attention to that yellow color. SketchUp doesn't necessarily follow all the available colors in the rainbow. The comments from last time was to reveal a bit more brick. We brought that up to window ledge and put some canopies over the doors. And the shutters were also added.
And you're asking for conceptual review, right?
This is
Approval.
No, this is fine.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. All right, any architectural or site comments?
Yeah. How do you handle the trash? How do you handle
Hands.
screening there? How do you want?
Be no site lighting. It's a daytime office. The cans will be in the rear. There's an area back there with we can build a 4-foot petition area to roll the cans in, to keep the can in during the week.
You can. But you want to put them in the same before you're gonna put there.
Yeah, all in that one area off the side there, side back.
So that would just be like. Comment. Air conditioning.
Yes, yes.
You'll add a handrail around the raised landing.
Yes, I'm not a SketchUp artist.
Okay.
But
And
yeah,
then the
definitely.
shed canopy over the entries, over the doors. It looks a little strange that it's a shed versus some other shape supported by those brackets. Is that a SketchUp error or something?
It's it's what's on the building on the corner. On the Cedar Street side. Katie Mays now.
So I'm just saying the brackets. Do you see the brackets? How they're 90 degrees, really not supporting the shed? It's,
Well, supported.
I know the shed is would be a header put up at the top underneath the rafters. Guess we had to draw that in, but something to attach them to.
He just needs to restudy the
Yeah,
connection a
I
little bit,
think so.
and we can get on down.
Yep.
Okay. There's a connection for the shed roof.
Yeah, I mean, I see what the connection is. He's just got a beam that is supported by the two brackets and then his rafters are attached to the beam with bird mouths. Bird mouth cuts on sitting on the beam.
Okay.
Just the way you build a shed roof like that.
At the top.
But it shows on this drawing, you can kind of see it if you really look.
All right, any other comments?
I have comment. I don't recall this being before the board before.
It was.
There's two buildings.
It was two buildings maybe a year ago, and then maybe 3 months ago, it was here.
It was here
For
in
one
July, July 20th.
Is that a meeting I missed?
It might have been.
Yeah, I just don't think this belongs in Somerville, honestly. I mean,
Well, the last time your comment was that it looked like nothing and that could be a cute little cottage look.
maybe
is
I
what
was
you
here,
Said the last time, yeah.
but
you were here.
it doesn't look like a cute little cottage. I mean, Somerville has a lot of great examples of nice, small buildings, and this is just not in that same. It looks like something you'd buy online.
It is.
Is that what we want in Somerville? Is that appropriate to the neighborhood? Is that appropriate to who we want to be? It doesn't look like something that belongs here.
There are a lot of buildings just like this, correct?
Well, I think we can all look at our past and say we've made mistakes. Are we going to do that again? Or are we going to learn from our mistakes and try and be better?
Well, they were built long before this board even existed. But there are a lot of older buildings that look just basically century like.
I know, but
This drawing doesn't really reflect what this building will look like.
I can't help that. I'm one person on the board. I don't think we should be approving buildings like this within town limits.
Ellen, did you include any contextual photos of neighboring property?
Yeah, they've been submitted 2 or 3 times. We've been doing this for a year and a half or so. Everything else on the street is a brick house, with the exception of the medical office, which is across a very large parking lot back toward Main Street. Tim, do we have that picture in the file of the?
No, I just included your provided renderings, SketchUps and the site plan. I know that we went through them. Your pictures, they were pretty extensive. You had the road and, it's vacant next door. And then it's the medical office to the left side. And as Elliot said, everything else on the street is a little brick ranch type of
And the
house.
initial
Most of them are.
application was all brick.
Mhm.
And that was voted down, so. We haven't come back with an all brick. With siding on it, and it didn't have enough reveal of the. Brick below, and so we brought it up to the window ledge, and so. If you just don't want this done, then just don't vote for it. But this is very small lot. Not a whole lot that can be done and meet all the different requirements, so it's a lot to do. 8. Well, it's not, this doesn't sit on the ground, but, yeah, yeah. Crawl space. It's a metal frame construction. This is a trailer, a office trailer. It's been converted to this office space permanent. No, it's off of Highway 61. I had pictures of those as well. But again, we've been here a few times. I didn't guess I didn't resubmit everything every time.
This is what I had, so. We, at the previous meeting, the board was generally supportive of the overall layout of the site. As I stated before, the reductions to the landscape borders for the parking were approved in the prior layout. They had 2 office buildings on it. So generally speaking, the overall layout did not change a lot from the previous approval, other than it going from 2 small buildings to 1 slightly larger. It's like going from 2 to 1.5, so to speak.
Yeah, it's not a mobile home. It was I think it was a modular office trailer that's
I think we've
converted.
worked through the site. I think we've always,
Okay,
some of
with the site.
have always. There are those of us that have always had concerns with the architecture of the building, particularly the massing and the scale. And maybe the window sizes, the roof overhangs, the roof pitch. And it was kind of like if the modular unit had not already been purchased, it probably would have been a very fast no. So that's the only thing that's holding us back. And I realize the gentleman is kind of trying to do the best he can, but I agree with Greg, is this building just doesn't really fit now. The property I think is too valuable. So I would have a hard time approving it as well.
And the building probably looks better than rendering.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might look worse just because it's modular and it's,
I think it looks better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, that's just 50-50 change.
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
Can you take a picture of it?
Got pictures, so
The modern?
yeah, got pictures of it. Possibly.
Greg, while he's looking for that, do you have any specific architectural concerns about massing or windows or all the above? Yeah, overhang.
I think there is the challenge with modular buildings is they don't have the detail that you would find in a cottage. You mentioned a couple of them. The eave, the corner treatment, the amount of window to wall. The quality of the front door. It's just everything you can look at. You can say, okay, there's a purpose for modular office buildings. They serve an important purpose in our overall society. The question is, Does it make sense to put it on this site in Somerville? I don't think it does. And I think when you try and turn a silk, what is that? Can't turn a sow's ear into a silk purse or something. It's kind of like, yeah, you can dress these things up and try and make it better, but they are what they are.
Elliot, any luck?
No, I got a folder missing.
Okay, any other comments? So do we want to make a motion or do we want?
let me just say, I think for what it is and where it is, 2 blocks back from Main Street. I don't really have an issue with this project. It's a small project. I would venture to guess that most people in this room have never been down that portion of 7th Street. So I'm okay with it.
I can be okay with it too, because I think it'll end up looking better than this one.
Okay.
Especially once you get the landscaping and everything else going with it, I think it'll look for that neighborhood and where it is. I think it'll probably be okay. Not great, but okay.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for final approval as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unopposed. 3 and 3.
Where's Canada?
Motion can't be approved with a tie.
So we have to make another motion.
You can make another motion, yes.
Right. All right, any further discussion before we could,
Are there any other enhancements you can make?
You know, like
Is
the
it-
front-
is it all-
front door? and
Is it all
gate vent?
budget driven? What is setting, this is it? Statement versus some of the comments, it not fitting in the context.
Well, the eaves are what they are. Okay, so the overhang is what the overhang is. That's, or you take the roof off and start over.
You know what the overhang actually is?
Somewhere between 8 inches and a foot. It's what's drawn. It's not much.
Can you add
When
outriggers?
is the doors themselves, I mean, the door, a half glass door. As opposed to a blank door.
Well, at least a panel door, not a flush door.
I think the actual door that's on it now has an oval window in it. I know it may not add much, but
But I mean, like a gable vent would help. Front door would help.
More windows. A porch, not just a concrete stoop, would help. I think lowering not having the brick continuous, but maybe it goes up and down potentially along taller windows that are more in proportion with the smaller buildings, historic buildings in the area. Not contrasting the corner boards with the siding. Just think there's a lot of things you could do to pretty it up. A lot. And, if it doesn't screams, hey, I'm a modular building, and it looks like somebody built it from using traditional materials, I think that would go a long way.
would horizontal siding above the brick do anything versus the vertical look to it?
The vertical tends, depending on the vertical product, you want to steer away from anything that looks like T11 siding. That's just not a good.
Is it true board and batten or is it
No, it's
not?
currently it is covered with T111.
T111.
Yeah.
Well, a real board and batten would look a lot better.
But
It
board and batten-
needs a little depth and. Like the brick looks like it's on the same plane as the siding. The way this thing is drawn.
Mhm.
And it's at least 4 inches out, and then your brick ledge would be another probably 6 inches out from the siding.
Yeah, I think the proportions of the brick are too high. If the brick were shorter, and that would make the building look taller, I think that would help. There's a lot of little things that you could do to help trim around the window.
So the brick should just really be covering the crawl space, right?
Maybe a little bit above, but it
That's what it
shouldn't go
was
all the way
last
up to the
time.
window.
Okay,
So,
the brick covered the crawl space last time, was not accepted.
well, you can't pick one thing at a time. You have to look at the whole building and say, what can you do to make this look like a customized building and not something that came off of a shipping trailer? And you have to add to it. You have a frame, you can add to it. You got to decorate the outside and make it look like something that belongs here and something that makes Somerville a better place.
Well, and you could use, 2-over-2 windows,
Yeah.
6-over-6 windows, something with mutton bars in it
Let me ask this
versus.
question. Right now, it is a box with T111 on it, so that all the exterior can change. It'd be really hard to raise it up any higher, given the grade drops off and we've got to meet an ADA. We're already doing 30-something feet of ramp to get back down to grade. on the
You don't
rear
need to
now.
raise the building up anymore.
Okay,
Yeah, nobody's suggesting changing the
But
site
the-
plan.
so the box is okay, just make it look better. Is that where we are?
Essentially,
I think so.
Okay. All
There's
right.
plenty of
And
nice,
I'm going to put my foot down on my client and say, you need a building designer to do this and quit asking me to sketch up. Say, so
Yes.
I've been trying to help him along. This is not DR Horton. It is not anybody who's developed anything in Somerville in 30 years. So he's trying to do one more project before he retires and gives it to his son. And doesn't have endless finances, and it's hard for local folks to do work. And just trying to help him out, but we'll come back to somebody who can draw it and make it architecturally look appealing. Whether it'll be a hand-drawn something, probably not, no attempt to put this back into a redesign, figured out SketchUp, but I was just trying to make the site look about more, I can add trees and shrubs and parking colors but got no business doing the structure, so did what I could.
I think if you had an architect.
You can come
just-
back with that. Okay,
Architect that would just give you a little guidance, you can get there.
Okay.
That's the challenge.
and I appreciate your input. I lived in Somerville longer than any of you, so accept that one.
So do you want to make another motion or do you want to withdraw? You could withdraw.
Yeah, let's
for a
just
month,
come
it's
back
not gonna
next
hurt
month
you.
and,
Yeah, just-
or whenever we can.
Does he just ask for a withdrawal?
But just. defer
Yeah,
on
I
the-
mean, in the past, other applicants have withdrawn after
I
a
just
failed
can't- I
motion.
Probably can't meet next Friday's deadline for the next submittal. If y'all can waive that a little bit, where you come in with something ahead of time, but not.
Yeah, so I have flexibility in what you can do if
Okay.
you would, or the board could defer to the next month if you choose to do that instead of having it withdrawn or voting to deny. If it's deferred to the next month, it's automatically put on the agenda, and then the submittal deadline is more for new submittals per se.
Right.
You can supplement your submittal all the way. Yeah, I have some flexibility on that. So we can work out those details outside of the meeting and just give me a call tomorrow.
Matt, you want
Appreciate
to
it.
withdraw your motion and
The motion failed, so.
The original motion failed,
fine,
so
that's
we
right.
could entertain a motion to defer.
I'll make a motion to defer.
For a second,
second.
all in favor, say aye.
I,
Thank you. All right, next is range water on North Maple. I'll be recused on that one.
All right, so the second item. Yep, I will get that up in just one second. The second item is a request for final approval for a proposed 155 unit multifamily development on 21.5 acres. Property is zoned PUD planned unit development, and this was last before the board in July for preliminary approval. I do have an alternate here. But the applicant has reduced the number of units from 160 units to 155 units. The units are spread across 30 buildings, 25 5-unit buildings, and 5 6-unit buildings. A clubhouse and pool are also included in the plan. Parking meets minimum parking standards. Most buildings are 2 stories and have rear access garages. The remaining buildings are 3 stories and have front access drive under garages. Exterior finishes of the buildings include a mix of fiber cement, lap siding, board and batten, and shake. There are a mix of colors shown in the plans. The clubhouse is a single-story white horizontal lap-sided building with black standing seam metal roof. Shutters are shown on elevations for the 2-story buildings. They appear to be operable and look like they may cover the full dimension of the window opening. But the shutters located on the 3rd floor windows of the taller units should be removed or an exception requested from the design guidelines if they are not operable and cover the full dimension of the window opening. So those are staff's comments. I will turn it over to the applicant, allow them to address their presentation, and we can go from there.
Great, thank you. Hi, Matthew Beck with Rangewater Real Estate. We're the developer on the project. As Tim mentioned, we were here in July. You know, a number of incredibly helpful comments from you guys that we tried to be as thoughtful as we could in addressing. And ultimately, we think, you know, the comments enhance the project. And I'm joined here by Seaman Whiteside, our civil engineer, Vignette, our architect, and Center Park Homes, our home builder, and we're here to discuss in detail, you know, how we tackled each of the comments that you guys provided in July.
Thank you, Matthew. So like you said, my name is Aaron Schmidt with Seaman Whiteside, and similar to what he just said, I'd first like to start by just thanking the board for the opportunity of the preliminary submittal that we made. The comments that were made by y'all really helped us refine what this looks like. And we truly believe as a team that we've come up with a site plan that is far better than what we had before. So we appreciate that. And what I'd like to do with you guys today is run through the comments that were made at our preliminary submittal and how we've addressed those and show them to you through the renderings that we have here. We do have site plans as well, but I think it may be best to talk from the 2 renderings from a site standpoint. After we're done with that, we'll then turn it over to Vignette, and Vignette will then discuss the architecture as well. And so we'll just kind of keep it as a rolling presentation for y'all. I do want to start by saying, just to give you some context of this site sits on the Salisbury property. It is covered by a planned unit development of the property. This property, or this section of the property, actually sits within the neighborhood commercial district, which lends itself to a more urban feel. So just wanted to get that out there as far as that drives a part of the reason of why we have the site plan that we do today. Now, this is a multifamily site consisting of 30 buildings. So the first thing that we wanted to address with the board was there was a comment that stated that the character of this development does not match the town of Somerville from an urban fabric standpoint. So we've made some fixes in order to help with that. One of the fixes is like Tim said, we took the buildings, we removed 1 building, we removed 5 units in order to create a little bit more room for us. Along with it, there were 5 3-story buildings. We've knocked it down to 2. And we've actually placed them on the back side of the development. So Tim, if you want to go to the second sheet, that may be best. And I may switch back and forth a little bit between the 2. The previous sheet had some magenta lining. Those are areas that we had changed. So we can flip back and forth a little bit. So where the wetland sits, which is the area rendered out with all of the trees in it. Along that wetland line, 2 of those buildings are called out as 3-story buildings. So we placed them back there in order to keep them, they address the woods, and so their 3 stories feels a little bit different than the rest of the area, whether it's a 3-story building addressing a 2-story on a main road. So that was part of the reason there. Another reason is that those 2 buildings back there sit with the garage underneath, and they address the road. So that is the only section of the property where the drives address the main part of the roadway. Everywhere else, we have allowed sidewalk to meander throughout the site in order to increase our pedestrian connectivity, and to again let it have that urban, that fabric and feel that we didn't necessarily have the first time. So if you want to flip back real quick to the first one, I just want to show how we've increased how our alley fed lots have happened, and then we have reorganized the lots, and you can really pay attention to where the magenta outlines are in order to compare that to what our new site plan is. So one of the other things that we've done is there's a lot of additional pocket parks that we've added, green space and more usable green space. We've also actually flipped the amenity center from where it is here. We flipped it to the other side. And if you go to the other drawing, I'll explain why. So we've flipped it to the other side. We've made it a little bit larger. One of those being a usable porch on it. And I'll allow Vignette to speak to that. But another reason too is that this multifamily development will be adjacent to another neighborhood commercial parcel that sits directly on North Maple Street. That parcel, the future plan for that parcel is to have a like a market or recreational area there, if you will, more of like a farmer's market area is the hope for that area. So we wanted to allow the amenity space to also address that, so that although it may be an amenity space for this, it then directly ties into the amenity space for the Salisbury community as a whole. So that was one of the reasons for doing that. It also then allowed for the opening of the lawn that we have as well, where the amenity used to sit. So we've made some changes along the site plan in order to just make this a more usable site plan. So I really just wanted to dive in to the changes that we had made for y'all. Like I said, the 3-story buildings, one of the comments was they were too tall and they're too close together. So we've removed 3 of those. There's 2 left. And then we have placed them in the back of the site. So another one was the garages. The opening on the main road was out of character. Again, we've addressed that through removing those garages off the main road as much as we can. And then along with it, we have, so I guess number wise, we went from 27 garages down to 12 that addressed the main road. So, and then in order to keep an unbroken streetscape, we have taken those out and then allowed sidewalks on both sides in order to create that feel there. So the parking was a question that was asked. So the parking that was in the previous site plan versus where we are now, we were at 356 before. We are at 370 now. We've increased that through allowing or finding areas where we can put more on-street parking, which then lends itself again to more of that community feel. So, and then I will actually allow Vignette to come up and address the other 2 of the simple elegance of the community and the amenity center alone. But I wanted to at least lay this all out to you guys to see how we've sharpened our pencils and we've come to where we are today. So I'd like to introduce Vignette, and Vignette will take it from here.
Hey, I'm Erin Cousins with Vignette Architecture. I think we can first look at the clubhouse on slide 11 is where that one is. So for the clubhouse, the comment there was that it needed to be larger. So we've increased it by 15% by adding a screen porch to the rear of it. And if we keep on going through those slides, do you have slides 60? Can we go to the hard drawings? And then how it also relates to the fire pit and extends out into that enlarged pool area. So really bringing the size of that out and the occupancy to be able to be closer elevated to the community. And then in regards to the comment about the two-story elements being more of simple elegance, if you go to slide, that's the, yep. So with these, we have reduced the number of elevations that you see per building to kind of simplify that and also simplify the roof lines. We've removed some of the corbel details from the previous version and reduced the brick that you saw there just to simplify that. And also kind of tone down on the color schemes with the white material being the prominent and just introducing pops of color throughout. And then on the three-story element building, the comment with the shutters, we just wanted to open a dialogue with you there. We have kept them, but we are open to making them larger to have them look more operable, or just removing them from the building altogether. But we wanted to kind of open that dialogue with you as well to get your comments on that. Yeah. Any questions?
Tim, can you just very quickly scroll through all the slides? It's quite a large submittal.
We can skip over the black and white ones.
Yeah.
Just for context, quite a few of those plans are your grading plans, your water and your sewer, stuff that allows for supplemental information should questions come up about it. That's quite a bit of it. And then there's some plans there as far as floor plans and elevation goes.
Great.
There's two of these three-story buildings and they're kind of facing the wetlands, right? Or the
Yes, sir.
back.
Yes, sir. They're pressed back to the back of the community, up against the wetlands. Yes, sir.
Is this the wetland elevation that we're looking?
No, this is the side that you see from the street.
Okay, that's right.
That's correct, because they have to have access. Yes, sir.
Is there any way, so the shutters act like they have some kind of function? You could change them to Bahama shutters or whatever they're called.
Yes, that could be an option that we could do that.
That would still have a little detail, but they would actually do some good. You could lower the things in the event of a hurricane, and protect the window. I'd leave the swing shutters on where it's a single window. I'd leave the swing shutters and the double windows, so that you actually had shutter protection. Just use a Bahama shutter.
Tell me when you want to stop.
I have a question. I have a question. You know, we looked at one rendering and it has small trees in front. Does every building have room to have landscape in front of it?
That's correct. There will be landscaping. In fact, per the requirements of the town, we do have street trees that will be required along this development. So we can quickly glance through the landscape plans if you want to. But most of what you see in these renderings are actually based off of our landscape plans. But I'm happy to run through those landscape plans with you.
But there is space in front of every building that landscaping can be there. They're not right on the road. Is that
No,
correct?
ma'am, they're set back some from the road in order to allow for landscaping to be put in there. Yes, ma'am.
And sidewalks?
Yes, ma'am, and sidewalks, and then also the required infrastructure that we need as far as water and sewer and stuff like that goes as well. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, Tim, if you can go to the site plan. Let's start there with the board. Any comments on the site plan itself?
I think this layout looks much better than the previous layout. And I like the additional open space that's been provided.
I think you've done an excellent job with it.
We all appreciate that. Thank you.
Is there going to be a monument sign announcing the development?
I'll allow Matt to speak to that.
Yeah, there'll be a monument sign along North Maple, and then we'll probably have some additional signage somewhere here, but I don't know that we've got that sorted out yet, but there will be a sign right at North Maple.
Okay, any more comments on site? Okay, how about Tim, if you can bring us to one of the architectural drawings.
Do you want one of the
Yeah,
renderings?
let's start with the amenity.
Give it a second. For the rendering, or do you want the
This
elevation?
is fine. This is fine. I just want to give us a stopping point. Are there any comments on architectural, starting with the amenity?
I think it looks nice.
Very nice.
Is that a standing seam metal roof?
Yes, that is.
And the colors are accurate to what you intend to build?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Great. Anything?
Color.
I think it's great. I mean, I've complained about every multifamily development that has come before the board for the last 2 years. And this one, I think it does make Somerville a better place. So thanks for
It does.
incorporating, and thanks for trying to, extend the fabric and create nice neighborhoods for families to start and maybe stay. And have
Thank you. We
places where
appreciate
kids
that.
can go and play, or people can walk their dogs. And it looks like you've checked all the boxes. I think it's going to be a great development.
Thank you.
Okay, can we look at one of the two-story buildings now? Okay, any comments on this particular style building?
My only concern in the rendering, the green looked like it might be a little overpowering.
Yeah, it's brighter here than.
Yeah.
What was that, Greg?
The green and the rendering seemed a bit,
Thought it was a
yeah.
little
This
over.
is the
Where's it?
green. We have a sample of it. So it's
Yeah.
a little more muted.
Oh, green.
It's pretty pale, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it just
rendering
doesn't look
seemed
at
a
here.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Okay, let's look at the three-story building, Tim, please. Very good. And this is the elevation that's facing the road, not the alleyway.
Yes, this would be facing the road with the wetlands behind it.
Okay.
I think the way you've done the garages is nice. I agree that even though I'm not a big fan of shutters, the three elements that don't have shutters look a little plain. And I don't know what you can do to spice those up a little bit without getting too crazy. What did you do on?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
one comment would be, I believe that these are, on these buildings, the windows are black, which adds a little bit of contrast. I think that helps. It doesn't look like they'll put that on this window. But on the elevation.
The other slides shows the breeze.
Slide 50.
There you go. Black windows.
Black windows.
How about behind the shutters? I still think they'll work.
I think Bahamas shutters would look out of place on this building. I think it'd look out of place compared to,
Bahama shutters.
Yeah.
if you're only doing it on the double windows, it's just,
What about just regular
Well,
shutters?
all the windows on this building are double windows.
Yeah.
So there'd be a lot of.
I just want to remind the board that you have the authority to provide an exception. If you think this is appropriate for this design, for this location, you can provide an exception to that requirement and allow this elevation to move forward with the shutters as is.
I think the shutters are okay.
I agree. I
The
do
three
too.
bays, just that it, compared to the other buildings, this one seems a little too, I like simple, but I think maybe this one's too simple. And
It
it
is
just
pretty
needs a
small.
little something to make it more like the two-story in terms of not being over the top, but just having a little bit more presence.
If we introduced extended overhang over those double windows on the ones that didn't have shutters, or
I think it's more on the side, but I mean, I'd still approve it and just have you guys think about that piece of it and see what you can do to.
How about a gable vent in the dorms?
yes, that's definitely something we could explore.
Huh?
We can explore that. Yes, sir. We could do
Yeah, I
that.
mean, that'd be an idea. That would add something of interest.
Are all the window frames black throughout the development or just on the three-story building?
Yeah.
It's just the 3-story.
And then what is the handrail? Just white metal
Do you have
on the balcony?
white vinyl?
White vinyl.
I like the contrast between the black and white. I think it's very stark and nice.
That's why the shutters help. That contrast helps. Cover a big gamecock wind vane on each gable roof.
I won't say where I went to school.
okay, any more comments on architecture?
I just have a question. Why the black windows? I mean, y'all seem to like it. That's not residential to me.
With the white color scheme for this building, the black just added the pop of contrast to give a little bit of dimension to the building.
Certainly, I'm not going to vote against it for that, but I do not think they look proper in a residential neighborhood. You could put a different colored trim around them or something and still just use regular nice windows. So,
These are shingle roofs.
Yes, the main roof is shingle, and then the shed roofs you see over the garage, the porches are standing seam to tie in
Yeah, I
with the
can
other
barely
elements.
Make that out, yeah.
mm.
Any additional comments on architecture? Okay, can you go back to site plan one more time, please, Tim? And what's the, I didn't pick it out specifically, but what's the plan for dumpsters and the mail kiosk? Where are those going?
So the dumpsters, that they'll have rollout cans for this.
Each unit has their own can?
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir. And then the mail kiosk will be incorporated into the amenity area.
Got it. I see where it says mail there. All right.
And then HVAC screen.
The HVAC will just be screened via landscaping.
Just landscape.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add?
I appreciate the board's time, and I appreciate the feedback. I know Vignette does as well, as far as the architecture, and then as far as the site goes as well. So thank you all for your time.
I actually have one more comment, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
sir.
What is the distance between, let's say, B21 and B20? And then are there windows on those end elevations?
So the distance between one building and the other is approximately 20 to 22 feet. I can't speak to whether there's windows on one side or the other. We could go to a rendering that may have that.
I'll see that. There are windows on the side elevations. They are smaller, but just to, if you want to go to the side elevations.
What are those rooms?
It is bedrooms on the top floor and then living area on the main floor. You'll see them in the bedrooms on the right and left side. So those are the egress windows. So those are the larger ones. And then on the ground floor, they're in the garages. Or sorry, in the living areas.
Do you have a elevation? Is it just? How did you break up those facades, if any? Okay. Okay.
Investing. All right, not any more discussion. Anybody want to make a motion?
So
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all again. I really appreciate it.
If I just want to remind everybody who comes up to the podium to please sign in if you speak so that I can get your name right in the minutes. Nobody signed in last month.
Okay, the next project is 117 West Luke Avenue. Proposed renovation addition to the Kersey House. The applicant is requesting conceptual review.
I actually want to clarify that that is actually final. The agenda was a minor typo. Staff report does reflect the accurate request.
Good.
If you just bear with me, I will get there eventually. So
You know you're coming for conceptual.
I had a hunch.
Chris called me out earlier, so it's fine. The third item under old business is the request for final approval for a proposed renovation in addition to the Kersey House. This property is zoned DMX downtown mixed use. It's located at 117 West Luke. It was previously before the board in July for conceptual review. If I can get there. The proposed use is for a restaurant wedding venue, requires renovation, modification, and in addition to the existing building. Prior addition and accessibility ramp will be removed and replaced with new kitchen space, a ballroom, a wraparound porch, a rear patio area for tents, and connecting covered walkway will connect to the porch. An accessory breakdown area structure will be added to provide cover. A new proposed landscape plan has been provided. The addition is proposed to match the historic architecture of the existing building, hardy lap siding, and trim to match existing finishes, metal roof to match existing as well. So, and
There we are. You good? Hey, Chris Carpus Design. Elliot Locklear here with me. He is doing the civil engineering for the site. We have made a few changes with regards to the architecture, but I think we'll let Elliot talk about the site first and then we'll move on. Okay. All right, the site looks kind of filled up. That rear portion is a raised patio. Tim, why don't you go ahead and Go to one more. Yeah. So the biggest thing on the site is we've got an outdoor area that is a patio that's up about a foot to foot and a half above existing grade. On the top side, that's storage and bar area. And is there electrical room or what is that? Electrical room on the back. So it's connected to the main house porch with ramp, ADA accessible. And then stepping off at the southern side of that deck is just a two shallow steps to the grade. And that graded area there on the bottom side will be a turf type material, not grass and dirt and oak leaves. Well, there'll be some oak leaves, but it'll be turfed, so it won't just be dirt. The walkway down the side of the property probably will not be a kind of the way it's just drawn on from the survey was as if it's a paved driveway. It's really just the two wheel routes that go down there now, and we're probably not going to do anything different there other than freshen up the gravel in it. So it will be more residential look to the drive around the back, and then the walkway connection to the area between the house and the back porch and the deck area. That deck area will be able to be covered with tent, depending on whatever they're planning to do, and be able to flow from the house out to the party deck and back, and there'll be birds singing, and you'll just be partying outside, and just be a very nature-esque experience. You can even hear it, seems like. So the drainage in the site was about the biggest thing to work out, and we're using French drains around the decks and the areas that are being added to pick up the stormwater runoff, and then getting those into pipes to tie into the roadside drainage out on the west loop. That I think we had 3 small trees being removed on that north side, but just a little cluster of straggly trees. But other than that, everything on the property is left in place.
The existing, you said driveway, is that just used for like deliveries?
Correct. It's not intended to be an ADA accessible, and it's certainly not for traffic. It's not even for drop off for guests. The parking is on the street.
Where's the trash enclosure for this?
They will use bins and roll it out to the back where they currently have access. Basically that parking lot in the back is, I think, where everybody picks up their trash. So there's not going to be a dumpster with an enclosure.
Any comments on site?
Yeah, one comment. If it says a restaurant and wedding venue, so is it a full-time operating restaurant?
Yeah, no, he's actually just going to open the restaurant portion for lunch, and it's really kind of just to supplement the what else is going on there. So it's he's got a full-size kitchen, so he kind of figured I should probably use it and just open it for lunch. So it's really pretty minimal as far as restaurant goes, but we have 2 kind of larger rooms in the plan that are existing, and then they can use the ballroom, but I don't think he has any great plans for having a big open restaurant all the time. So.
Are you wondering if rollaway bins are going to be adequate as opposed to a dumpster?
Well, mostly just a wedding venue, and I could be wrong about this, but usually it's catered, and I'm not sure that they're going to. I'm not saying that they're going to take away all the trash, but like plates and everything, all of that is going to be handled and brought in and removed, and so that should reduce the overall waste. But really, there's no room for a dumpster on this site, so it kind of is what it is.
This doesn't have anything to do with the site, but it looks like you don't have enough restroom facilities.
Sure we do.
Doesn't look like it.
If we want to go, we can go to the plan if you want to talk about that.
Okay, we'll talk about that one under our architectural
Okay,
when we look at the plan, but it's just,
it's no problem.
No more site. Okay, let's move on to architecture then.
All right. So I'll go ahead and discuss the outside first, but I did some calculations, Bill, on using the deck outside too for an assembly occupancy, and came out with the restrooms that we have. So beyond that, you know, it is, Rebecca will make sure that I take care of that too. If we go to A1.1, this is actually, that was the demo plan, kind of just showing what we're removing off the back. And we've seen all these for conceptual, but I'm gonna run through them real quick and tell you what we did different. So so the only thing really different on this particular plan is that we switched the cooler and the porch at the top of the plan, the north side, and it worked better for the configuration in the kitchen, and it also freed up those two windows that would have been covered over with the cooler. They're now open, albeit to the porch, but they are no longer affected by the cooler. If we go to A2.1, the next sheet, this shows the existing front with the added kitchen on the side that's set back. We can look at the plan and see how far it's set back, but you see that we switched it. All of every architectural element, we tried to connect it with the existing building materials, the roof as much as possible, and so so that is the change. We'll see a little bit better in the rendering. If you go to the next page, not much has changed on this one. The top shows the existing to be removed, and then the bottom shows the extent of the wraparound porches, which are actually more true to the original design based on what we found on site. And the next page is the back. You can see the shaded area to be removed, and what's being replaced there is basically all porch. What I've tried to do is kind of recreate the front porch on the back so that it becomes really part of the venue itself, the experience of the folks who are going to be using the property. And the covered walkway there is on the right. You can see it a little bit better in the next slide. This is the existing north side facing the accountant's office. What I'm doing with the cooler there is, you know, there are some louvers on the site, ventilation louvers. What I'm trying to do is use some, basically like a 2x6 screen at the cooler there on the right side, and then along the porch, the ramp and the covered walkway. I was trying to tie that in with the existing porch, but somehow I got to transition it back down to where a tent could be on this thing 8 foot high. And so all of the architecture is like functionally working with the possibility of a tent being there so that people don't get soaked. So I added some louvers for shade on the covered walkway there on the left side of the bottom drawing. That will be not so much for shade, but it's part of the transition from a really high structure to a lower structure. If you look at the next sheet, that kind of shows the view from the very back of the property with the storage, the prep area and the bar that he's going to have up there, and how it transitions from the high porch down to something a little bit more. Basically, it's kind of a shed and prep area, and so it's the gabled part of the back of the building is in center line of the covered walkway, and then I have a little bit of a shed roof off of that, and that was to kind of work with when the times that they have a tent there, so that the drainage would work. So it's more functional than anything, although it kind of looks like the building that is being torn down. And then the bottom two drawings there show the overall architecture 2D drawings. And you can see that they all do connect architecturally, and everything kind of steps down to that back area. If we go to the next drawing. This is the changes that I made at the kitchen. One of the comment actually was, I think it was Greg, we were talking about how it engages the existing house. And what I had there before was basically a shed roof over that. And I decided to do a shed roof over that area with the porch. All the steps and everything will match the existing front. The shed roof kind of took a little bit of the aggression or aggressive way that it was kind of engaging the house and absorbed that. So if we go to the next slide, it probably is very similar. Get a little bit more landscaping in there. As far as landscaping goes, we really don't intend to change anything on the front except to take out one of the crepe myrtles along the north side where the power pole is, so that we can have a little access there to the kitchen. Moving on to the next drawing. This is the south side. It's pretty much existing. You can see where the porches connect in the back, and a little bit of the raised deck with the short brick wall around it. But largely you won't really see anything from the road of the major part of this renovation. Next slide. And this shows our intent with the raised area in the back. So the owner of this property did a lot of work in Lowndes Grove down in Charleston. They have a really very nice raised area with a brick wall around it, and it's he was kind of looking at that as the bar to be set here. So you can see the rear porches wrapping around, the louvers or the screens that I'm talking about doing on the covered walkway, and how they transition down to the deck. All right, the last slide, I think it's the last one.
Chris.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, the existing brick on the existing building, is it black?
It's painted.
Okay.
Is it painted block or brick?
It's well, it's both. You got
Both.
all sorts of stuff down there, but it's brick and block, but it's all, which is probably why it's painted actually. And it's painted really dark. Right. I would rather, so I used a little bit of that on the brick on both sides of the ramp, but I thought that it would be better to go with a brick that matched the steps for the surrounding wall, and we have a little bit more opportunity there to do something that looks good rather than a really heavy brick there. All right, and last drawing is kind of from where no one will ever see it, but kind of shows a good overview of what's going on there. On the side of the bottom of the drawing there, facing the back parking lot of the neighboring office, will have a lot of that screen as well, because we're going to put some coolers in there, and I thought that would be a good way to ventilate it and also break up that elevation. But the rest is all siding to match, brick to match. As much as we can match the existing, we're going to do that. So, all right. Any questions?
Okay. What's the back patio surface made out of?
It's going to be tabby.
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 Anything from architecture on this side?
I think your massing is fantastic.
Thank you.
I like how you have all these side ancillary buildings attached and walkways and how you dealt with shade and roof lines.
Thank you.
Great job.
We'll find out when everybody stays dry. For sure, but I appreciate that.
Greg?
I think it looks good also.
Thank you.
Yes, it does look good.
All right, any further discussion? Anybody want to make a motion? He's asking for final review.
I make a motion for approval of final concept or
Final approval.
final approval.
Second.
First and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I believe we're next as well as we.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is going to be 314 North Gum Street.
Yes. This is the project that we brought through a few months ago. Just wanted to make a minor change to it.
Yeah, it's a request for a change from architectural shingles to, from standing seam metal roof to architectural shingles.
It kind of self-presents, but if you have any questions.
Is there a reason why you're going from metal to shingles?
Owner prerogative, both are contextual, so
There, didn't you say last time there are, and this time there's a lot of shingle roof in that specific neighborhood?
yeah, there's a lot of both. So, okay, both would be
I
contextual.
thought I heard a motion down here.
Make a motion to approve.
For a second,
Second.
all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thanks again.
I've got my agenda right. The next is new business 402 to 44 North Cedar.
Oh, you moved number 5 up.
Yeah, that one just did that one.
No,
No, we just did.
you just did Gum Street. Yes.
Okay,
134 north.
so 134 North Magnolia. Anybody here for that? Yeah. All right, we'll stay last. So 402 to 404 North Cedar Street. Right?
All right, bear with me a second. Let me find that. In the packet. Here we go.
That's me.
So this is a request for final approval for the proposed painting of the buildings located at 402 and 404 North Cedar Street. The applicant is requesting that both of the buildings be painted to blend in and cover painting that was done by a tenant without permission from the owner. The applicant has tried to remove the unapproved painting without success, and the proposed painting is to cover that up and make the entire center consistently the same color. Staff would recommend that if painting is approved, that the sides of the building also be painted for aesthetic purposes. So I will turn it over to the architects and let them go.
So I'm Rachel Boyd with Boyd Architects here on behalf of the owners of 402 and 404 North Cedar Street. Next slide, please. So the property is the Piggly Wiggly Shopping Complex here in Somerville. There are two buildings, the larger anchor building containing the Piggly Wiggly, that's 404. And the smaller strip building containing, I believe, 3 merchants, that's 402. Next page, please. So here are the existing conditions of 402. You can see it's red brick. Next slide. So this is the unfortunate problem area in question. One of the tenants painted a large stripe of white paint on the building without the owner's authorization. Next slide. Here are some photos of 404, the Piggly Wiggly. As you can see, the two buildings are separate, but they are cohesive architecturally with all the same detailing. Next slide. So the owner is also a contractor, and here are the list of repair attempts he's done so far to the white painted stripe on 402. So we have power washing with acid, application of a graffiti removal product, and brushing with a wire brush. And none of these were successful in removing the paint, and the wire brushing in particular, it actually seemed to be damaging to the brick, so it was discontinued. Next slide. So to hide the white stripe, we are proposing lime washing of both buildings so that the complex is still cohesive. The lime wash should be on the primary facades only. So on 402, the smaller building, that would be all the facades except the utilitarian facade in the back. There's lots of wall mounted equipment back there that would make painting it tricky. So that's the facade on the top photo. So on 404, the larger building, we're proposing lime washing all of the brick facades, but not the painted CMU on the back and on the sides. And you can see those painted CMU facades on the lower pictures there. Next slide here. So here's some precedents of the lime washing, just to give you an idea of the level of opacity we're going for. Next slide. And then just some quick photoshopping before and after to give you kind of a sense of what it might look like if we were able to lime wash. And I should say the owner's also looking to phase the work. So phase 1 would be the smaller building completed within 2 months of approval, hypothetically. And then lime washing of the larger building would happen within 12 months. And that's it.
When we did the CVS drugstore on Main Street,
Mhm.
it's still there. It originally was an AMP grocery store. So we put a CVS drugstore in, which is still there. What we did, we could not match the AMP store brick. So what we did was we bought the closest brick we could to it locally and filled in all the storefronts, because drugstores don't like storefronts like grocery stores do. So we filled in all the storefront with the new brick. And then we hired an artist to come and stain the new brick to look like the old brick. So that was 15, 20 years ago. The stained brick still looks good. And we didn't have to paint the building or anything else, because we don't really like people to paint buildings like this too much.
Yeah.
Have you considered it'd be a lot cheaper to hire an artist that was really good with colors to just paint the stain / paint the brick that's discolored now?
Mhm. Yeah, maybe let's go back to page, let's see, 4, maybe you can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I go there all the time. So, and the brick on this building is not the same as the brick on the pig building. There's 2 different bricks, I think. They were built at 2 different times.
Okay.
But this would be easier and a lot cheaper, you know, it doesn't look like the buildings have been pressure washed because there's so many dirty places on it. So they may have only pressure washed where the paint was. But the pressure, you know, clean the whole building and then just stain that brick that's currently discolored.
Are you saying stain it like a solid color?
No, you stain it, you mix your stain up and it's either opaque or translucent.
To bring it back to red? To bring it back to red, is that what you're
Yeah, bring
proposing?
it back to a red brick. Not all the brick in the building, just the brick that's been discolored. But that'd be a cheap, easy experiment to do. And it'd be a whole lot less expensive. Who owns this? David Willis?
Yeah, the Willis family.
But it'd be a whole lot less expensive on him to experiment with staining that brick like we did on the old AMP.
Did it, when you
like-
did that, did it have the same, texture? Brick has lots of different color variation in it. When you stain it, does it become just a matte color?
No, I mean, yeah, it became, but your mortar joints stay the same. So you pick a dominant color or a couple of colors. You got 2 or 3 different colors of brick in there.
Mhm.
Just different. It has to be an artist.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
can't just get a guy off the street to do something like that.
might be tricky to make it look blended in, but maybe.
But you need a true artist to do it, but it's
Yeah.
still a lot cheaper than doing.
All right, can we,
Look
Tim,
at it.
can you go back to the drawing that had both buildings in elevation?
Picture.
Or I guess it's about that one.
This.
Mhm.
Right, so I don't. If this were just, hey, I want to come and paint the building, forget those vandalism, just say they want to paint the building. I would say the one on the lower right, I would say, yeah, paint it, it looks much better. Stain or whatever it is. To me, that looks better than it does now.
It does.
I think it's a stretch to say, well, let's paint the pig also. The same color. I'm not really sold. I don't think it doesn't look good now. The paint's not helping it. I would probably push that to a separate application. Because it doesn't have to be the same. There's no reason those buildings need to be the same. And I would just look at, I think the building on the right looks better. Like,
I should say that's the desire, just to paint the smaller building from a cost perspective, but we thought since they're all one complex, we wanted to offer the
I'm
ability
not-
to paint
I'm
both.
not
I
buying it.
would not paint the pig. I'd be adamantly against that. But yeah, if you can't stain the brick, that's
Mhm.
what my first choice would be.
I think.
I'd paint it like you show, with material that you're showing.
Any thoughts on painting
Just
versus
that,
the lime washing, painting,
lime wash.
lime wash? Okay.
Well, what I would say is I actually think the longer building, I know it's got a problem and what you're suggesting, Bill, might be great. But it really, when they do that, they need to kind of wash the building. It needs to look better, but
Yeah.
the white look has a good fresh look to it. And,
Well, it's not paint, it's lime wash.
right, that makes a difference.
And
Yeah.
you know, if that'll cover the discoloration of the,
Mhm.
due to the tenant, I can't believe the tenant did that.
Yeah, it's too
Must have
bad.
been the tie tenant.
I'm not sure.
I actually think what you have proposed looks good. I would just add cleaning up the mansard roof or whatever these roofs are,
Mhm.
pressure, so that it gets a entire fresh look.
Your gutters and downspouts, everything, just, make them look good and fresh. Storefronts.
Any other discussion? I don't like painted brick. Lime wash, I think, has some possibilities. I would agree that only start with the first one. And if the first one turns out well, then bring the second one back. It's a possibility. Or something that's complementary. And I agree with everything else that was said on cleaning up the roof and just freshening up the whole building. If we've gone this far, may as well just go ahead and finish it up. So. Would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion that we turn down any coloration, any coloring on the pig. And we approve the lime wash on the smaller retail building.
Okay.
Along with cleaning the
Mhm.
metal roof and the gutters and downspouts.
Wasn't that your original proposal, though? You were just
Yes,
gonna do-
although I wanted to be clear, it's just the 3 facades of the smaller building. Is that acceptable? Not all 4? That
That's
we were approving?
acceptable.
Okay.
Oh, she's not doing the backside.
The short back
Where the
side.
meters are.
The end,
Well,
the backside's not brick, is it?
it is. So the top
It
photo
is.
there, this is the back and it's brick.
Yeah,
It
you
just
need to
has a
do all-
little,
need to
that
do all
changes
four
my
sides.
mind.
okay. Okay.
All 4 sides.
Whole side.
All right, was there a second? You did a second for that.
Did your motion include all four sides on the small building?
All four sides.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next is 918 West Fifth North. And Tim, you have the Mr. Halter's recusing.
So the next item on the agenda is a request for conceptual review of a proposed new commercial metal building located at 918 West Fifth North Street, property zoned LI Light Industrial. This was formerly a residence. Based on initial review, these are staff's comments. The applicant is requesting a new 52 by 85 metal building. There are 8 standard and 1 accessible parking space located to the rear of the building. The applicant is not requesting any reduction to the required 15-foot landscape buffer. Existing materials will need to be verified, landscape materials will need to be verified for inclusion in the required landscaping counts. A landscape plan will be required, a signage plan will be required, a sidewalk across the frontage is required to connect to the adjacent sidewalk on the Sphinx property. The building is proposed to be a metal building with a brick veneer wainscoting, about 36 inches tall. A canopy with brackets is proposed at the front side and the main doors. An overhead door is on the south side for deliveries. The proposed windows do not meet the design guidelines for being taller than wide, and a red metal standing seam roof is proposed.
And they're just asking for conceptual, right?
This is just conceptual, correct?
So just providing comments. No.
Hello, my name's Robert Harlow. I'm with Benchmark Land Development Services, and I'm here in place of the owners, representing them. Yeah, it is a metal building. It's going to be a retail fireworks store. We have, if you look at the site plan, can you go to, I think, page 2? We have 8 spaces, 1 handicapped. We have a dumpster enclosure, opaque, and we also have access, handicapped access with a parking space at both entrance and exit. There's also a plan for having a enclosed, not enclosed, but a chain link fence, opaque chain link fence security area where they can store things securely in the rear of the building.
Is there a reason the windows are sized the way they are?
No, we wanted to break up that wall, and really it was a matter of not making a clear thought, but we wanted to break up the large wall and not just have it a blank metal building. So we thought putting windows in there. They have interior, they have shelving, very high shelving going on the walls. So we put them up high, still letting in some ambient light, but wanted to break up the exterior wall.
All right, any questions for site and building?
So the customers will park in the lot, obviously, and then they'll have to walk all the way to the front door on the short end.
No, they have doors on the front and in the side rear. Right there where you see the first handicapped access,
That's a door.
right there, there's a door there. If you look at the elevations, if you go to the third, right there. So where that door is on the bottom left, the parking is off to the side there.
Is there not a sidewalk requirement along West Fifth North?
Yes, that was stated in the staff report. Spinks has installed a sidewalk up to the property line here. They will be required to provide that extension across their entire frontage.
They need to put the extension in, but Spinks only stops at their driveway. They don't go to the property line. If you look at that aerial photo,
I looked at the street view and it's right at that fence line that's there.
but they need to go regardless. They need to go to that property line anyway with Spinks.
Yeah,
Their
they need to pull it across the entire frontage.
Yeah.
Connect to
yeah,
that.
No matter where it stops, they need to get
The
there.
existing sidewalk that's there that was installed by Spinks
Bingo. Yeah.
and carry it on. And then when the next person comes in next door, it'll get extended a little bit further each time.
Yeah, and you all have to connect from your building to that sidewalk along the street.
Yes, sir.
And the site drains from the rear to the street? Is that
We
why the
have-
retention pond's in the front?
We have the retention pond in the front. The lay of the land slopes that way towards that pond. We also have in the rear parking is a gravel parking, which should help with the percolation of the water, the rainwater and disbursement.
With the sidewalk along West Fifth North, do they need to make a connection to their front door?
They should, yes.
Understood.
And what's the fencing? Is there a roof on the fencing?
No, that's open fencing. In between, when they start loading, they have we wanted to put a rear door, a roll-up door in the rear, so they have that. But in doing so, they want to make sure that they have a secure area while they put things in and out and also transfer the product in and out of and change for seasonal purposes and have a secure area.
And what is the fence material?
A chain link opaque with some, haven't decided on what style or what type of material to use to fill the slats with, to make it solid, to make it opaque.
Have you considered something more substantial than that?
Such as having a,
I don't know, just horizontal
More architectural.
and something more architectural?
metal fencing, paneled metal fencing or paneled wood fencing.
It could be wood, unless there's a
We'll take that. yeah.
functional reason.
Wood, gas and fireworks.
No, no, it's, no, don't. No. No. Did I mention, I think they smoke too, but that's okay. That's all right.
Need to store plenty of propane in that fence.
Tim, can you go to some of the architecture, please? You can come back to the site too, if you need to. Okay. I think this corner is becoming more and more prominent every day, especially with the Maple Street widening. So it's really a block off of the new Main Street. So I think the few years ago, I think this building probably would have been okay. Now, I think that it probably needs to have a better quality of materials. I think the windows should be, particularly the windows should be a little bit more proportional than they are. Maybe the roof pitch needs to change. I'll kind of defer to the architects. Now there's
When you say changed in slope, are you
deeper?
talking high, so steeper, not
Deeper.
more? Okay.
Right, thank you. I think it just needs. Maybe it's more architectural detail, more, it needs to look like a better building. I don't know how to really articulate that. Like these guys can. But I think it's good for a metal building somewhere else. But in kind of a new Main Street, I don't think it quite is at the level that it needs to be at.
It's a metal building.
It's a metal building.
Yeah, again, being the conceptual, we're going back and forth with the owner, trying to make subtle changes, trying to keep within his budget, but also trying to make it that it's not just a metal building.
Yeah, and it needs to still look like it belongs in Somerville and get beat up for calling it a cottage because it's not. It's a small little retail building, but it does not look low country. It looks like a metal building. So I think I've seen metal buildings that achieve kind of that low country look. But for me, it's gonna have to, all that has to get better.
Understood.
That makes sense.
It does.
Do you have a sample of the red and the brick?
Actually, yes. We have, the manufacturer's sample. What I will be doing on the next go around is bringing in, samples up there for regular,
And the brick is what?
I'm sorry,
The brick,
I don't have a sample of the.
what do you envision? Anything?
It's similar to, probably like a, speckle, we used to do a speckle to break up the brick itself, not just a solid red brick color. But we have black that speckled, mortar, the one speckled mortar.
I think when you revision
Which
the
one?
proportion,
That one, colonial red.
Well, and Bill,
How about Charlotte?
you probably have an opinion on this, but remember, Bill,
It's more red.
years ago, that's architectural study was done in Somerville, and they said that Somerville is really known for its black roofs.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's
Like, is there are very few black roofs. Most of them are red or green.
there's more black roofs in
that.
Somerville than other low country towns, is what
But
what the architectural study showed.
well, I don't believe
So-
it because everyone I see is red or green.
I will say in the owner's defense, being the name Red, no, don't shoot me for the name, Red, White and Boom. He was going with a more patriotic red, white, and maybe have the blue sign. Is what he was hoping for.
If you go down Sumter Avenue, they're all red on Sumter.
My brother lives on something, it's silver.
Okay, silver,
Slows blue.
very few black, mostly red.
That's the nice thing about the internet.
thinking
You don't have to
Canary's
argue.
red.
You can just open up
You
a
can just
picture.
open it up and look at it.
Yep.
Canary's corner.
Little tour later.
Canary's corner.
Can we move on?
Yeah. let's-
right. Chris, I'm very proud of you. It's
Thank
only
you.
taken 3 years, but you're finally like, especially for a landscape guy.
I think you have to look at the proportion of this brick wainscot or whatever it is, base.
Higher,
How tall is this building overall?
eve height is 24, no, 20, the eve height is 20.
And they need that volume inside?
Yes, they have the storage, they have the racks. Think of it as similar to like BJ's where you have you can take on and off here, but they'll store as they go higher, bring it off and then replace what they're selling below.
And I think the signage technique, once you do get it refined,
Mm-hmm.
needs to look part of the building as opposed to just
On
screwed on the building.
metal siding, what do you suggest? Are you talking
No, I'm talking about the sign.
the signage? More of a
It just needs
raised
to look
lettering
like it's
type or,
not necessarily the technique, but it looks like it needs to be integrated
okay,
so that it doesn't say, this looks temporary.
it's flat
It
sign.
could be fireworks this week and it could be, chimneys next week. So it needs to look more permanent.
Understood.
All right, so what are we gonna do? I think we're trying to say, if I was reading Chris's or interpreting Chris's words correctly, I think this is a total complete restart from ground zero. And this is not, we're not gonna put anything that looks like this at that location. that whole string with the projects we've approved in the last 3 years on 78 have been scrutinized and much higher quality level. Now, the street has, on the other side, it's a history of repair garages, and I love those repair garages. They do a great job, but that's the past. The future is it's a main artery to and through Somerville, and everything we put on there going forward has to be best of class.
Aside from the idea that it's a rectangle, keeping that with a higher pitch, are we talking about siding? Are we talking about the brick
Just
with the siding?
The last, you probably weren't here last time, but as the coroner's office has the same concern, it's a taller building.
Mhm.
And they've taken a few passes and say, how can you take a building that by program, if you're saying programmatically, it has to be tall. And I don't know if it does, but I'll take your word for it. If it has to be tall, then you have to do something with the siding and cladding to make it look like it's not tall.
Can we break up, for instance, on the gable ends, having more of a batten look with a type of,
Yeah, there's all
maybe a
kinds of
different
ways
siding
you
up
can do
on
it, but
top?
but
just to break
taking
it
a
up?
tall building and putting a tiny little water table brick is not helping. You need something that's up higher. The other problem with metal buildings is they never use freeze boards. They never have an eave that's of the right proportion to the size of the building.
Mhm.
And they just look cheap, and they don't have to be cheap.
Mhm.
They just look cheap. There's they put one on Orangeburg Road. Do you know what that has it? Not, yeah, Orangeburg. Between Main Street and Central on the west side. I drive by it every day. I don't know what it houses, but it's a metal building. But they did everything they could to make it look not terrible.
Are you talking about the new daycare next to the Dollar General?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a metal building. It's not in town, but yes, I agree. They did a
So
good job.
there's
on that.
examples out there where people said, well, economy is forcing me into a metal building. But I'm not gonna just put the typical siding and roof that comes with a metal building. I'm gonna do something to make it look like.
And really, for me, it's like there needs to be some, no offense, there needs to be some serious architectural studies by an architect, not a metal building seller that says, well, how about if I had no, it's an architectural study needs to be done. This is the new Main Street off one of the most desirable cities in the world. And this needs to reflect very high standard.
Understood.
You gotta explain.
Yes, page 6. And these are within about a half mile of that location. Correct. The school isn't a metal building, really.
All right, well, they were just here for conceptual. Is there any other questions or any other thoughts you have or
No.
anything else we want to communicate? Remember, it's just conceptual, so
No vote,
no voting, so,
just discussion.
okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Just want to ask the board members to remember, turn your phones on so we can hear you. Thank you.
All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, the next up is North Maple. 336 unit apartment complex. Right?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone.
34 North Magnolia after that. If they're, then we need to grab Matt. And
The next item under new business is a request for conceptual review of a new proposed 336 unit multifamily development on 18.3 acres. Property is zone GB, general business. It's located on the east side of North Maple Street, south of the Old Dairy Road intersection. Property is currently undeveloped. The proposal includes 7 4-story buildings, a clubhouse, pool, cabana, and open air gazebo. There is a right-in, right-out entrance on North Maple, with the primary entrance located on the Old Dairy Road extension. A total of 504 parking spaces are proposed, giving it a 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Adequate bicycle parking is proposed. The tree protection board is required. The majority of saved trees will be located in the rear of the site adjacent to the ditch. Brick, cementatious lap siding, architectural shingles, and standing seam metal roof are the proposed materials for use in development. We've seen this site before a couple of times. The prior developer has pulled out, and this is a new proposal from somebody different. So I will turn it over to the applicant and allow them to introduce the project.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to go through our project. I'm going to give a brief overview of our company, then introduce our civil engineer and the architect, and we can get into details. As you mentioned, you've seen the project before, so we'll dive into the details of how we've changed it. A little bit about One Real Estate Investment. We're a multifamily developer out of Miami, Florida, with active projects throughout the Southeast. We are privately held with a one-man investment committee. When we do our projects, the goal is to hold all the projects long-term. So we put a lot of thought into our projects, because if we save a penny now, it costs us 2 pennies later. So we put a lot of thought and do quality work throughout the Southeast, and we have plenty of people that can vouch for that. Like you mentioned, you have seen this project before. We have made some significant changes. For example, breaking up the massing of the site into more buildings, not, fewer larger buildings. We've also added a nature trail park, and we've done other things. At this time, I'll turn it over to Jessica from Site Design, who's our civil engineer, to dive into the details.
Good afternoon, almost evening. Could we go a couple slides down? It's probably 3 more slides. Let's see. Oh, it's definitely different order. Okay, so if we want to go, let's see, that site. Perfect. Thank you so much. So as Bob mentioned, I am Jessica Chapman with Site Design out of Greenville, and I'm the engineer on the project. And he mentioned before that you've seen the site before. And so the last development that I saw for the site did have the larger massing buildings. But I think one thing to point out of particular note is that the previous developments that you saw, if you look on the south side of the kind of that green red band area, which is the drainage ditch and wetland and buffers, before that was all parking and garages. And we've decided to maintain the look and feel of that area by making it a mulched nature trail and gazebo, with removing as few trees as possible, only removing those that were identified by the arborist as being in poor condition purely for safety reasons, given that it's a pedestrian area. And so with that, and looking at the trees, because I thought it was very intriguing that Somerville has one of the oldest tree ordinances in all of the nation. And so with that in mind, we're actually saving over 30% of the trees that are 16-inch in DBH and larger, and over 15% of the trees that are 20-inch in DBH and larger. Most of those trees are being maintained in the red strip area that you see, with some within the green strip, which are the buffers to the wetland. And then also saving those that are along the nature trail area. And so with this development, similar to how you saw previously, we are extending Old Dairy Road. So Old Dairy Road extension will be going across North Maple Street. It will have a left turn lane and a right turn lane into the development. The road alignment is slightly different than you may have seen previously, primarily because it provides more of a gradual transition versus a rapid transition coming off of North Maple. And then at the end, it terminates in a temporary cul-de-sac, which in the future will be going under the power easement and serve future developments. With this Old Dairy Road extension, we'll be coordinating based on conversations with Bonnie out of engineering with the developer across the street to provide a signalized intersection and alignment to the modifications that were not in our survey for the portion of existing Old Dairy Road. And so we, as I mentioned, we'll be adding the signalization. And so I think one important thing to note is most of our residential is sitting on the east side of the development. And so there is an existing 50-foot drainage ditch. And then from that, within that drainage ditch is the wetland. And so most of our buffering actually falls adjacent to the residential. And so those that are next to the nature trail will only be looking at the nature trail and then a gazebo that may be 8 to 10 foot in height. And then the others will have stacked both, again, the 50-foot easement, which is full of trees at the moment, as well as the buffer off of that easement. So it's a 30-foot setback, which would have 2 adjacent 15-foot landscape easements within that. For building to parking, if you look at all the buildings, none of them are sitting on top of one another. They're all separated further than is required by architectural standards. And so the majority of the buildings are sitting at 80 feet apart, except the 2 that come off of the right in and right out only coming off of North Maple Street. So it provides good separation between the buildings. All the buildings are sitting at least 10 feet off of the back of curb to provide the room for both the sidewalk and landscape, with many providing more than that as you work in and out. So that 10 feet is the closest point on the building. And so in some cases, you may be looking at providing 20 feet. The garages and parking, as I mentioned, were removed from the previous design that wasn't this developer. We're looking, the one main thing to note along this is that we show one sidewalk along Old Dairy Road extension. We will be adding a second sidewalk on the north side of the Old Dairy Road extension and continue with that sidewalk connectivity throughout the site. So we're trying to make it a very walkable space. And so also with that area that's to be not developed other than a mulch trail, that will allow it to continue with the walkability of the site. It would be lovely if there was other connections into that for other people to be able to walk, but I think it's a great amenity for the residents themselves. We have larger landscape islands, and so we don't have cars parked head on to one another with essentially their bumpers touching. In all scenarios, we've allowed for landscape in between the cars that we can provide both buffering and in some cases potentially providing bioretention areas. If we would provide bioretention areas, I'd love to partner with the town of Somerville and potentially put in placards within those areas that are educational placards so that people can come see effective bioretention areas functioning on sites that typically don't utilize bioretention areas. The parking has been designed with keeping in mind that all parking spaces would have to be within 60 foot of a tree. There also are larger landscape islands to provide the footprint needed for trees to grow without being root bound in the future. And so as it relates to the site, you can see that the detention is sitting on the southern side of the site. All utilities will be coming off of North Maple Street. The garbage facility is located just south of the detention pond. And that garbage facility will be buffered from the adjacent southern or southwestern vacant tract. We will do a water main extension and sanitary sewer main extension to serve the site. And if you see right now, we have a space at the intersection of Old Dairy Road extension and North Maple Street where we haven't pushed the clubhouse next at that intersection. And one of the primary reasons for that is that actually allowed us to save more of the 16-inch DBH trees that are sitting that intersection. And so with that in mind, because the site is so low existing, it's hard to save them sprinkled throughout the site. It's better to mass them in certain areas so that we can maintain them and because you can't grade on top of roots and expect them to survive. And so with that in mind, I'd like to turn this project over to BSB Design, who is the architect, unless you have specific questions prior to turning it over relative to the civil design. Okay. I will just quickly sign in.
All right, any questions regarding the site and the layout?
Yeah, the only thing that seems a little counterintuitive is having the cabana on Maple Street rather than more interior where you could use the blue building to shield some of the street noise.
And again, I understand that if we did flip and rotate it, we would lose more of the larger diameter trees by doing so. And I believe that the developer is fully comfortable with allowing the cabana to be at the intersection, and it kind of allows for a little more of a green space at the intersection versus just a solid wall of buildings. But I
You
understand.
understand
that-
the comment about the road noise?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's really y'all's call, though. You're the property owner.
And we will be adding additional landscape to what's there as well. Naturally kind of filling in the area to provide a natural barrier versus a wall barrier or not natural barrier.
Tim, can you go down to the next slide, please? Is that a pool area behind the clubhouse?
The one that kind of zigzags?
Yeah.
Yes, it is a pool area. Yes, sir. And so the clubhouse has multiple amenities, the pool, the cabana, all of the mailboxes are internal to the clubhouse. There's, I believe, an outdoor kind of yoga area, so to speak. I won't be testing it out. You guys are more than willing. I'd probably fall at this point, I think, in my life. But so yes, it is an outdoor pool area.
Okay.
For the site.
Have you looked at, if you go back to the overall site, Tim, have you looked at somehow breaking up this mass of structure along Maple of those three buildings? And is there a lot of trees that are going to be maintained along that out?
So in terms of existing trees, not as many, that would be more new landscape. And so if you really break it down, so if you go back to the very first slide that you showed, which is kind of a hotspot map, so to speak. And so what I did is I took the tree survey from the arborist and I took every tree that he had designated as good, poor, bad, etc. under the 16 dBH. And so the red, and so basically the diameter of what's there signifies what would be the growth diameter of the tree, or the tree line, the drip line. The color represents the color as designated, whether it be poor in both orange and red, good or in green, and fair in yellow. And so you can see basically along that North Maple Street, there really aren't any or hardly any 16-inch dBH trees that fall within that designation. The majority of the trees really do fall within the area that we're preserving as a nature trail, as well as within the buffers. And so, yes, there are trees out there, but they aren't larger trees. And if you look at the tree survey overall, which I'm guessing is sitting on the two slides after it, most of the trees that you see here that don't fall, one more if you wouldn't mind. That grouping of trees are mostly pine trees, most that are smaller in diameter that have just kind of made their own little forest, but there aren't a whole lot of trees along North Maple Street to preserve that meet that 16-inch threshold.
So what is happening along Maple Street between the buildings and the curb line?
It would be landscaped by us because we are adding the turn lane. And so that would be shifting then the existing sidewalk into the site to maintain that connectivity. It would be proposed landscape, and we can put in larger diameter trees to not start with twigs along that run to have rapid growth as much as possible. Any additional civil questions at the moment?
How many, you may have already said it and I missed it. How many parking spaces are you offering for?
So it's 1.5 to 1. So there are 336 units, and I believe it was 505 parking spaces. One moment, I'm sorry. It is 504 parking spaces. And so I know that the minimum for Somerville is a 1-to-1 ratio, but I can tell you, having done other apartment complexes and driven around them and been annoyed that I can't find parking spaces,
You need more.
that you do need a better ratio than that. And having driven around the neighborhood behind, even those residential neighborhoods don't have the natural parking that they need, because a lot of people were parked in the open drainage ditches. And so this is to prevent people from hopefully parking in green space in other locations and keeping that space sacred, so to speak, so that it stays green.
You really almost need two per unit. Since
Um,
most people have two cars and, but you meet the town requirements, so that's it.
And as he mentioned before, that they've done a fair number of developments around the country and they have found that, and they could have gone the minimum of one, but they have found in their neighborhoods that the 1.5 to 1 meets the need. 'Cause I think
That
when you're
works,
looking in
but
one
it's-
bedroom, you have
It's
a lot,
it's not an excessive number is my point.
right, because we're not looking to provide
I mean,
what.
I'd want two if I was gonna have an apartment complex.
Personally, I don't want to live in an apartment at this stage in my life. It's all just different, different points in different people's stages. Sorry, Bob, no disrespect, but I have the dog and I have the kids and I
I
want the
quit doing
yard.
that in 1972. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah,
No.
I only lived there for a short period of time while my house was finished being built and I vowed not to go back. So, but it's the right place for a lot of people and a lot of people love not to having the yard maintenance. I mean, for me, I spend hours and hours and hours on the weekend in my yard. So,
Have you started any stormwater calculations on this? That pond seems like it's maybe a little undersized.
so the stormwater calculations haven't been fully started yet. That was going to be after this stage because it's part of your next checklist. So that was based on our standard, I believe is 12,000 cubic feet per acre of disturbed. And so realize in terms of volume, and if you remember the one you saw before, it's actually similar volume. But we amassed it all in one area versus having one tiny pond and then one larger pond. Because I think in terms of water quality overall, it's better to have a larger pond. And if it's possible, I don't know yet, but if we can make it a wet pond, that is the intent. And if making it a wet pond, we can again make it more of an amenity by potentially putting an aerator in there, which helps quality as well. But those calculations will be completed by the time we see you next.
So if you have to expand the pond, what's the plan? What do you lose or how do you reduce the
Probably
impervious
lose that
area?
adjacent parking that you see straight to it, because that gives us the biggest bang for the buck is removing that parking pod. That is the sidewalk that runs to the nature area. And so that would allow us the biggest growth, still meeting your requirements while providing additional volume.
Didn't you say earlier that all of your landscape areas you're going to try to use as LIDs?
No, I'm sorry. I was saying that for the larger areas for the parking, so the areas that were parking faced onto one another, my intent is to make the larger ones bioretention areas. So not all the landscape, but those, because smaller LIDs really don't function as smaller LIDs in the long run. So the larger footprint islands would incorporate LID. So as much as possible percolation with a raised inlet, essentially, so the water would have to perk first before overflows would go into the inlet and then into the detention pond, because that's kind of the treatment train process. And so that would be the first stage of the treatment train would be bioretention for only those areas that are adjacent to parking. The buildings would likely be piped directly to the storm drainage system to get to the detention pond. I don't know yet what the infiltration rates are. The previous designs, they had geotech, but those geotechs didn't do a perk rate. And so that will be part of the change with this. And so once we feel we're comfortable with the alignment of the buildings, we'll get additional geotech and determine for sure what the perk rate is at the pond location.
I do think this layout is better than the previous that was brought before, just as far as some more open space and not feeling like crammed as many buildings as you could.
Well, I like your building screen and the parking. You drive down the Parkway, Maple Street, and you're not going to see anything but nice buildings.
Right.
You
And
won't see parking.
right. And if you know, I'm sure you guys know this very well, it kind of falls off from Maple Street down. And so we will be doing some filling because it's inevitable not to do some filling. But as we're doing that, though, I'm going to assume that some of the buildings are going to be lower than the road itself, which will allow you to not have quite that height stacked upon it. Again, I can't tell you exact elevations yet because it's your next stage of submission that requires us to provide with you kind of a schematic grading plan. And I didn't want to get too far into the weeds until I knew that you were okay with the design as is.
It reminds me of the development we reviewed across the street. And remember, we rejected the first one because they had the 3 buildings in a row. And then they came back and I think they rotated a couple and set one back. Tim, do you remember which project that was? And can we get a site plan of that one? Was that
If you're talking about the one that was directly across the street, I mean, I could scrounge up the old one. But yeah, I mean, there is the townhome one, the one that you guys
Now, this
just dealt
was
with today. Then there was the one in front of it that's essentially directly across the street. maybe a little bit further south. I mean, I can find it for you if you want to look
Yeah, I
at
think
it.
if you could send it to the applicant, because I think they started out with 3 long buildings in a row. And we had a lot of concerns with that, just what that would be like from the street side.
So I think that somewhat we've already broken that up, having the parking pods in between. And so if you notice, I mean, it is a little bit of an unusually shaped site. It's kind of a triangle, so to speak, with the tip cut off in parts of it. And so one thought process could be keeping the building alignments as they are, because I've tried many different rotations, but where you see the parking pod between the 2 northern buildings on the west side, potentially shortening up that parking pod, taking a few of the spaces out to provide more of a deep in-depth undulating landscape island versus.
Yeah, I don't think it's the landscaping. I think it's the face, the length of the wall. How long is it from the building at the top to the one at the bottom? Is that like 300 feet?
Let's see. So the length of the building. Bob?
More than that.
This is,
How long is your west property line, basically?
No, from building to
building to
building.
building. Let's see, where to scale, the 1 inch equals 60 feet. Give me one moment
160.
on that other site plan. Quick and dirty. 320, 320. That's 320,
Here.
640,
It's too much.
640, and probably another 740, approximately 820 feet. That's a quick and dirty using the scale.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hold off till we see the architecture, but to me, it's
South tip
looking
of the
like.
building to the north tip of the building for the buildings along North Maple Street.
Here.
It's only 120 feet?
No.
800.
820,
800.
approximately 820 feet.
So,
And again, that's just a quick scale using the drawings that are to scale.
so when we made that comment to another project,
Mhm.
I feel that we're obligated to make the same comment to you.
I don't
because-
remember that comment.
Would you prefer parking to be there? Because I thought your intent was
Well,
that parking is
I'll
internal.
find it. It's that kid from Virginia who came down here and they presented that thing. You don't remember that meeting? You wrote all these, Bill. I didn't remember many house, so don't worry about that. But they had 3 buildings in a row. It was a
Mhm.
really long facade. We were concerned that that was creating a wall of buildings, which was
Mhm.
not like Somerville. And they ended up rotating and setting some back, so there was some break in the driver experience down Maple Street.
I think you're talking about the same property.
This one?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
I think
It was on
the next step,
was-
you'll probably have to do some massing studies.
Mhm.
And what would be beneficial to developers, some sun studies too, to see if these buildings really cast large
Large
shadows.
shadow. Mhm.
So it's just something to think about for the next step.
I think they want to do some architecture.
Right.
So we have,
They done
okay, so we have a rendering that you can see that Aaron with BSB will be presenting. And so just, I'm fully clear. I know, I think, was it Greg?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I tried to find, I know that you didn't want me to call you Lisa, so I didn't go that route, so. Because the name tags don't align with the people. And so he's like, why Lisa? So Greg, so help me to understand. So if they stay in the 3 grouping as they are, does that make it when we come back next time that it will get a denial, or to come back
Oh, I
next time
can't
and say, hey,
predict
we
what's gonna
tried?
happen in the
Help me to
future.
understand.
I'm just giving you some context or history of a prior applicant.
Okay,
It started out with 3 buildings a row. We didn't like it and they came back with a different layout. And I'll go through my notes and find out when and where that
Okay.
was. The other comment I have from a site plan, it looks to me like buildings in a parking lot. And I appreciate this idea of creating a bioswale between the noses of the cars. And I think that's a really good thing to do.
Mhm.
But it still looks like buildings placed around parking.
Mhm.
And it's like, there's no there. I mean, what's how do you create a neighborhood? And what is the feel of the neighborhood when it just seems to be buildings and parking?
I think that possibly Aaron's rendering may help with that somewhat. If we could go back to the three buildings, just throwing thoughts out. So if that southern building were taken and rotated a little more, maybe on a 30-degree angle, that concept potentially, because again, I've done a lot of layouts on this site.
Tell you,
Okay,
this is conceptual.
Yep.
Those are comments. We're not
Okay.
going to tell you what to do.
okay.
We're providing comments.
Okay.
We have the same. I agree with Greg that along that Maple Street elevation,
Okay,
if you can break up, and it could be just simple, you know.
like a
instead of-
slight rotation, like, okay. Yep,
And the other suggestion, drive through Nexton. Because you can see in Nexton exactly what we don't want on Maple Street.
okay. Appreciate the comments.
Talking about as soon as you come over to the bridge.
It's just building after building after building and no sense of place.
Okay,
There's no sense of place. There's no sense of identity. I don't know who designed it and built it or why, but I look at it and say, why did you do that?
mm-hmm.
And is it really just to plunk down apartment buildings around a parking lot? Are you trying to create a community? Or are you trying to create an extension of the Somerville fabric?
Right.
And that's what we're really looking at here. This is not just an island out in a former field. We're trying to extend the Somerville fabric.
Mhm.
Aesthetically, perceptually, in terms of types of spaces we're creating between buildings. What do people do in this neighborhood when they want to go out and go for a walk?
Mhm.
Walking through parking lots. That's kind of what I see. And
I would hope they'd utilize the nature trail in the area
got-
that's being
you gotta get to
preserved
the
as an
nature
area
trail.
space to walk versus just walking, I mean, walking through just the parking lot, since within just a few steps from their front door would be the nature trail and the gazebo and an area to both a child to go around and look
I
for the
agree.
little bug and the area to
gazebo
walk
and
their
and
dog.
that piece is that's a nice amenity. But
So-
is it enough to say this is a neighborhood? Or is it a bunch of buildings with a nice path to a nice gazebo?
Did you have any contextual or conceptual architecture yet?
Yes,
Why don't
I
we
think-
see that?
Why don't we
can
look
go
at
on the
that?
side.
Yeah, let's move on to that.
yes.
Hello, good evening. I'm Aaron with BSB Design, if you didn't catch that earlier. This is the package we put together, but we've also snuck in some conceptual views at the back. I know it's getting on to evening, so we can just jump to those if you want. And I can kind of start to summarize, what we were
Sure.
thinking architectural wise. I'm sorry. what-
It's your show. You take
Okay.
it where you want us.
We've heard the word low country a lot and that comes back, but trying to find a way to translate that to a larger apartment building, there's some filling into the gaps there, but I think we're trying to be, understanding of the materiality, this is somebody's home. It's just on a larger scale and part of a larger apartment. But the idea that we're using similar materials, large windows, bringing in lots of natural light, the idea that the window patterns reflect what's happening behind. Living spaces tend to have more windows, the bedrooms, fewer. But again, that there's kind of a telegraphing of what's happening beyond. These buildings all have 4 doors. Essentially at the lower level, you can access from any point. So there's no real front or back to them, but it kind of allows access universally around them. If you want to go ahead to the next slide, we'll jump into the materiality a little bit. I did hear some comments earlier about color. We kind of jumped in thinking coastal, low country. How do you kind of develop a palette that's sympathetic to that? And starts to differentiate some of the massings of the building. And so we've kind of started with this. If there's an opportunity to maybe pare back some of those colors, I am perfectly okay with that. I think our developer as well is okay with that, but I think we were looking at trying to develop a tapestry of textures and materiality that express kind of these buildings. We've got a decent amount of brick, but we're using it on the balconies. We're trying to pull it off the face of the building. We like that because it gives the facade a bit more depth. So it's not just a singular plane, right? We have the buildings themselves stepping and the balconies are sitting proud of that. And you can kind of walk around and experience the brick rather than it just being a flat plane. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is one of the long elevations. You can see the material palette. At the entries, we're using a copper colored standing seam that's down low in the middle. That would also be at the ends. And up high over a couple of the balconies, we have some darker colored standing seam that aligns with the black architectural shingles. The material that's not brick is all cementitious, so it's either lap siding, which is the majority of it. And in this version, the kind of aqua color, we're using the smooth panel with the trim boards to kind of delineate the grid that highlights kind of the window patterning, but to give it some texture. Let's go ahead and go next. So this is an image of the corner. Let's keep going actually, because we put together some conceptual imagery that maybe starts to highlight these a little more. One more, please. So this is a site plan that shows the context. Let's go 2 more. So this landscaping is conceptual. I mean, again, this is all very conceptual, but trying to show the massing and how these buildings present on the site, and where we're thinking we can get decent buffers of landscape. So this is the side that would have the drainage ditch. You can see the wet pond, and then to the right, you can see kind of the main entry in the corner. We can go next. So this is the main entry corner, and you can see the clubhouse. It's all single story, but we have 1.5 story volumes. And we actually do have a loft space in the gym that's right behind this element here on the corner. So you can kind of see the 2-story piece. So it does have verticality to it. We've got tall windows. But the idea that this is kind of a series of buildings, or kind of a folly of buildings with the roof lines, so that kind of builds up from this corner and offers a sense of entry. So you kind of know that you've arrived, is the intent. You can see the cabana that's out on the corner there. It has some public or some resident space in it, as well as servicing the pool. So people have parties or, family or things like that. They can rent out the cabana and do things kind of up there on the corner. At the entry, we would have monumental signage. And we do need to include the significant tree saves that are happening at this corner by putting this building at that location. We can go next, please. So this is a lower vista from that. Again, you can kind of see how the roofs build up from the corner, and then the layering of the buildings as you step back to the trees in the back of the site. Let's go ahead and go next. This is kind of an aerial, so you can see along Maple, and I think we're talking about the concern of that wall of buildings at the edge. We have put significant gaps between them, and we do have the articulation of the facade. I think we wrestled with, do we address the street and want to kind of establish that there is an edge on the street? And I think it is a good comment that you have, is how much is enough and how much is too much. So I do think we need to find that balance. But I think we like addressing it, establishing the edge of that street for, future development to come, right? Like is the street edge defined, or is it soft? Right now we've looked at defining it, and then it starts to pull back a little bit as you get to the corner to increase visibility, and also to kind of note that sense of arrival. If you can go next, please. So this is a view from the street kind of looking across. So you can kind of see where those building gaps are. You can see the depth of the facade, and you can see how it kind of layers back through the site to the buildings. So that's how we were seeing it, as a way to, present these as elements that are strung along the street, but not a continuous wall. So there should be visual breaks as you're going past and looking into the site and being able to see through to the buildings in the back and what's happening beyond. And then the final slide is a shot of what it may look like from the gazebo out on the trail. I probably don't have enough under coverage and landscape in there, but the idea of that, this is the buffer to the residential, and it's also on site, as a respite away from the main buildings. And then the final slide is a more in-depth description of materiality that we're looking to include. We've got a brick to be selected, but we're thinking tumbled, so it's got some texture. The lap siding, the smooth white vinyl windows, and the standing seam as accents to the black shingle. And I will pause there and see if anyone has comment, questions. I went kind of quick, but wanted to, I don't know.
I think you're probably wanna shield along Maple for your residents, because Maple is a kind of a through street to the expressway. And so, you know, it's not as pedestrian friendly as you're showing it on your rendering. So that's why, you know, the suggestion of buffer
Mhm.
and maybe skewing the buildings to
Okay.
get them a little bit away from Maple would create a nicer ambiance. Where are any of the condenser units? Is everything on site somewhere or in the building?
Currently, they would be on site. They would be down a grade is where we're starting rather than up on the roof.
So you'll have enough room to put everything, in,
We do. I
like
mean,
the
it's,
trash and everything else?
yeah, I mean, the trash is remote. It's a, what is it, single point or double point? Single point, yeah. Are you doing concierge here or? Maybe, okay. Okay, potentially valet trash, so it's picked up at the unit and taken to the trash enclosure.
And also, you know, emergency vehicle access through that.
Yeah,
Your site.
we'll confirm fire truck radii turnarounds and access points. Okay.
Is there a mixture of, can you describe some of the materials?
Sure, we can go through these. You know, so we've got, we're showing two different colors of the lap siding. We're using the tan and the white. The numbers there, I know screens, colors always represent differently. So those are the Sherwin-Williams color numbers. If anyone wants to go check them out. So we've got, you know, two colors of lap siding. As the building changes plane, we're changing up the color a little bit. And then we've introduced the aqua color in certain areas. You know, I would be open in hearing what your thoughts are on introducing lots of different colors or trying to have a reserved color palette. You know, we felt this was regionally appropriate, but I don't live here. Maybe not yet anyway. I hear this
Well,
is the
again,
most desirable place.
I
but-
encourage you to drive through next and to see everything that you should not do.
Okay.
And all of your questions will be answered. My concern with it, the buildings are big. They're really big. It doesn't feel like Somerville. The big porch elements made out of brick, I've never seen that anywhere in Somerville or any relationship to the building size, scale, and proportion to anything in Somerville. And as I said on the site plan looks like an apartment complex.
Mhm.
The buildings make it clear it's an apartment complex because you're taking the same exact building and plunking it down 6 or 7 times. I'm not sure we want to encourage apartment complexes. We're trying to encourage neighborhoods that might be apartments. But in the end, you shouldn't be able to look at a neighborhood and say, that's an apartment complex. You should look at it and say, that's a really nice neighborhood. I wonder if it's apartments. I wonder if it's condos. I wonder if it's townhouses, where this one just screams, here's an apartment complex. I think 4 stories is too tall, especially on Maple Street. I wouldn't mind 4 stories or 5 stories once you get away from that. I just don't know that 4 stories is the right scale. And again, I think we have to go back and look at the other development that we approved. I think they changed the Maple Street to 3-story tall. It's a lot visually, it's a lot. And when you have a big building, this, what did we think it was, 300 feet long, 250 feet long?
I want to say it's about 225.
225. So that's the size of a Class A office building. Those are big footprint buildings. And if it's an office building, they're typically fewer architectural moves because you want an office building to say, I'm an office building, I'm big. Housing, you're trying to break down that scale and say, I'm not that big. I'm all these different smaller pedestrian scale things. But when a building's 240 feet long, There's only so much you can do to break that down. So you try different planes, different massing, different colors, and you hope that, you know, that helps. It's just you're fighting a lot. You're fighting 4 stories, you're fighting 220 feet long. And it's just, to me, it seems like a lot. And I'm not sure breaking it down into this many parts and pieces is helping you.
Okay.
Maybe a fewer, simpler, maybe a few bolder, bigger, but fewer instead of all the. I just don't, again, I don't see Somerville in the site plan. I don't see Somerville in the height scale and mass. I don't see Somerville in the articulation of the facade. It just seems very foreign.
Sorry, seems very
Foreign,
foreign. Okay.
yeah, but next to. Try and figure out a way to weave it into, you can't copy the Somerville fabric because the Somerville fabric is much smaller scale. And the real challenge that I think designers and developers have in these bigger developments is how do you retain the feel of Somerville, realizing that you have to be more dense. And you can't put these tiny little buildings like we have. So you have to create density, but without losing the feel that we have in and around town. So the more you walk through Somerville, downtown, the neighborhoods that are close into Somerville, that Gum Street area across the street, all of these areas have a different character, but they have a similar feel. And it's human scale, it's natural materials, it's being refined without, you know, look at me. You know,
More subdued.
subdued but not boring. Look at Bill. Great example. Subdued but not boring. A lot of personality, but he's not jumping down, up and down and saying, look at me.
All right, any other comments?
Do you have any questions for us?
Not at this juncture. That was helpful. Do appreciate your commentary. You know, I would add the 4-story. I think we've wrestled with a bit. We liked that it opened up more space at the ground level, preserve the, you know, tree saves in the back potentially. Or we have. And, you know, all these buildings I would note do have elevators. So it does kind of open them up to, you know, a wider range of potential residents.
Well, how else can you get variety? Do you have to have, is it 7 buildings on the site or
It's 7 plus the
7.
club. Yeah.
is there a chance to have some variation and not have 7 identical buildings?
I think there's definitely opportunity for
The other
variation.
big project you should look at, Tim, what is the one they're building over by Sawmill? That's a huge development over by Home Depot.
Yeah, I think they're called apartments at Sawmill. There's over
It's
400 units.
Sawmill, it's not Sawmill.
Yeah, I
That's a,
can,
They've got a medical facility under
Yeah.
construction on the corner right now. But you might want to just forget about a slope roof on these buildings and just say this building is going to be commercial. They don't need to look residential, just make them look commercial, get rid of the slope roof and put flat roofs on them and plywood. Make them brick. Do something, but make them look like precast. I
Well,
don't know.
we have
Make 'em look
pitch
like
roofs.
Commercial buildings.
The Sawmill has pitch roof though. Because we talked to them a lot about that.
Yeah, Sawmill looks residential.
I
They're
think you should at least take a look at the design
not
drawings for
4
that.
stories tall either.
Well, they had a variety.
Yeah, a lot of variety, right? They all got a lot more land too.
Because I think, you know, part of it is if you come back knowing what the board has approved in the last 3 years and what we've rejected, I think you'll kind of see a pattern of, hopefully, a consistent pattern of what we're looking for. And we don't want to try and recreate the past. We know we're moving to the future. We just don't want that hard line to say that's the past and this is the future. How can you grade that line, adapt to the changing economics?
Well, Somerville historically has never had anything like this. This is all totally new to Somerville. There isn't any background in this, so it's difficult. think we need to reach out and move on and look at a new approach for new development like this.
You
No,
get a
understood.
chance to break some ground here.
Sorry.
You get a chance to break some ground here with the new design.
We're hoping we can. I mean, we, you know, it's a beautiful place. We would certainly like to contribute to its
Good.
existence and not be contrary to it. So,
Well, this is just conceptual review, so there's no vote on this, but we do look forward to having you back.
okay. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 134 North Magnolia Street.
This is a request for final proposal for a color change for the building at 134 North Magnolia Street.
Is there anybody here from 134 North Magnolia?
I don't see anybody.
They weren't here earlier. either. We tried them all.
It's pretty simple. I think
It's very straightforward. They're just painting the yellow parts white.
Do we still?
Oh my God, Dennis's building, okay. Wait a minute, this is a new building he was gonna build though, isn't it?
no, he's just painting that.
The
That was
existing building?
sold. Dennis sold it. The applicant just wants to paint that old house white.
Can we still vote on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? White's more historic.
That looks like a fire hydrant.
The yellow is much brighter than what that picture makes it look.
In downtown, they painted that sort of keep away the heat.
Come on.
You guys think it's better?
You can see how bright yellow that is.
It's probably brighter than that.
What are they gonna do with the trim? Is the trim gonna be, is it gonna be all white?
I believe it's gonna be white on white.
It'll be like a Somerville house, white on white. 99.
All right, let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, nothing under miscellaneous. Motion for adjournment.
Second. Third.
All in favor, say by going out the door. Thanks, everybody.
They know Somerville.